Welcome to those who are just joining. Welcome into our virtual sanctuary. Wonderful to be all together. And a special shout out to the Paley family once again. All of you and all of your friends and loved ones here this morning. Mazal Tov. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. 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 Shabbat Shalom again. There are more people coming in to join us. I want to encourage you, as you do, to remember to look up, to look at the faces that are here. One of the paradoxical blessings of being in this remote format is that we can actually see each other's faces, which we couldn't all do if we were sitting in the sanctuary together. So look up and share a smile as a way of sending a greeting. I learned from a young friend this week about how if you smile, it actually changes your internal feeling. So even if it's been a week where you maybe didn't feel like smiling so much, sometimes putting on the external costume helps shift the internal feeling. So invite us to turn now to the Siddur, page 141, and begin our morning prayers as we welcome ourselves into our shared tent. Morning blessings now, beginning on page 151. Custom to stand for all who are able in body and all of us in spirit to rise. Page 151 and following. L'shem yichud kudsha b'richu shchintei, hineni mukhan u'mezuman lekabel alai mitzvat aseh ואהבת לרעך כמוך ובזכות זה אפתח פי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים המעביר שינה מעיניי ותנומה מעפעפיי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים הנותן לשכל ובינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים רוקה הארץ על המים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים פוקח עיוורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים זוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים המכין מצעדי גבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים שעשה לי כל צורכי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים עוזר ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים עוטר ישראל בתפארה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים שעשני בצלמו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים שעשני בת חורין. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי עולמים שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו אחרי העולמים הנותן ליעף כוח. Invitation to breathe deeply as we take our seats. The last verses on page 167. כל זמן שהנשמה בקרבי מודה אני לפניך אדוני אלוהי. ואלוהי אבותיי ואימותיי, ריבון כל המעשים, אדון כל הנשמות, ברוך אתה אדוני, אשר בידו נפש כל חי, ורוח כל בשר. We open ourselves now to deeper expressions of praise. And I'll invite us just to tune in here to our screens for the opening of Psuke de Zimra. Lai, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Lai, 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 Brucha Hi, Baruch Shema. Lai, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Lai, 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 Brucha Hi, Baruch Shema. Blessing God's name in all the possible genders and everything in between. Blessed is the one whose speech is the world. Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Blessed is the one forever creating. Brucha Hi, Baruch Shema. Blessed is the one speaking and acting. Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Blessed is the one separating and sustaining. Brucha Hi, Baruch Shema. Blessed is the one whose love fills the earth. Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Blessed is the one whose compassion gives life. Bruchahi ubaruch shema. Blessed is the one who brings us full circle. Baruch hu baruch shemo. Blessed is the one living forever. Bruchahi ubaruch shema. Yachid che ha'olamim, page 181. Melech meshubach umeforad adeat shemo hagadol. Baruch atah Adonai Melech me'ulal Batishbachot. Amen. Now let's find our way to page 201 in the Siddur. Page 201 to Psalm 136, and to say together the refrain of the psalmist, Ki le'olam chasdo. Just that, Ki le'olam chasdo. And to sing together this refrain. Just bear with me for one moment. Page 136.
Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Elohei ha'Elohim, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai Adonim, ki le'olam chasto. Le'oseh niflaot gedolot levado, ki le'olam chasto. Le'oseh hashamayim,
Creator of the heavens,
bitvuna,
great understanding,
ki le'olam chasto. Le'roka ha'aretz
who spreads out the earth,
al ha'mayim,
who separates it from the waters.
ki le'olam
That love is everlasting.
chasto. Le'oseh
King the great
orim
lights, sun,
gedolim, ki le'olam chasto. Et hashemesh le'memshelet bayom,
Please govern the day.
ki le'olam chasto. Et hayareach v'chochavim le'memshelat v'layla, ki le'olam chasto. Shebeshifleinu zachar lanu, ki le'olam chasto. Vayefrikenu mitzarenu,
I'll say,
ki le'olam chasto. Noten lechem
Giving bread to all those who are
Bechol
hungry.
basar
Kirei
Leolam Chasto Hodu lehel Hashamayim Ki leolam Chasto Hodu lehel Hashamayim Ki leolam Chasto Ki leolam Chasto
Ki leolam chasdo. God's chesed, loving kindness, extends throughout. We're introduced in today's Torah reading to a beautiful name of God closely related to Yud He Vav He, which we often pronounce as Adonai. You are welcome to use whatever God language works. As we call to worship on page 247, and in these next few prayers, I will be using the name Eheyeh, which is the only time that God says in Torah, my name is. You tell them that this is who sent you. And the name is Eheyeh. It is simply becoming. Page 247, we rise in body or in spirit. Baruch hu et Adonai ha'eheyeh ha'mvorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch eheyeh hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch ata eheyeh Eloheinu ruach ha'olam yotzer or uvore choshech ose shalom uvore et hakol. Page 253. Thank you for the wonders of the beauties, the intricacies of creation. El Adon al kol ha'ma'asim baruch umvorach befi kol neshama godlo v'tuvo male olam da'at u'tvuna sovavim hodo hamitga'e al chayot ha'kodesh v'nedar bechavod al ha'merkava zechut u'mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu yetzaram beda'at bevina ufaskel koach ugvura natan bahem liot moshlim bekerev tevel maleim ziv umfikim noga na'ezivam bechol ha'olam שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם עושים בהם הרצון קונם פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו קר על השמש ויזרח אור ראה והתקין צורת הלבנה שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש יאללה לה לה יאללה לה לה יאללה לה לה יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה לה יאללה לה לה לה. Page 269. May we indeed all tune in to the fashioner of all new things, the seeder of all righteousness, the grower of all saving acts, creator of all healing. Creator of all healing. Awesome in praise, the source of every wonder. Hamachadesh betuvo b'chol yom tamid, ma'aseh v'reishit kamur. Le'oseh orim gedolim, ki le'olam chasto. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, ונזכחו לנו במהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אהיה יוצר המאורות. Page 275, affirming love, connection, tradition. We pick up at the top, and as soon as we are ready to turn the page to affirm the oneness of all, we also turn the spotlight to Aidan and family, who will lead us in the Shema. 275. והערנו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך ולא נבוש ולא ניכלם ולא ניכשל לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו כממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת. להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה, ברוכה את אהיה, אוהבת עמה ישראל.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בפשיטך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, ובטחתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
A moment to continue on our own, the following pages. Some type of
Adonai Elohechem Emet. We turn now to page 291. Tilot Lel Elyon Baruch Hu Vorach Moshe uMiriam uVnei Yisrael Lechanu Shira B'simcha Rabba ve'amru chulam Mi chamocha be'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehilot osef eleh Shira chadasha shibechu geulim L'shimcha sfat hayam Yachad kulam hodu v'himlichu Ve'amru Adonai imloch Leolam vaed Sur Yisrael Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael Ufdechenu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Page 295. Adonai sifatai tiftach Ufi agid tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Sarah Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Rivka Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel Ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer chasadim tovim V'konei hakol V'zocher chasdei avot v'imot Umevi gula livnei bneihem Leman shemo b'yahava Melech ozer u'moshia u'magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah gibor leolam Adonai Rav lehoshia Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem Mechalkel chaim bechesed Mechayei kol chai berachamim rabim Somech noflim v'rofech olim Umahatir asurim Umekayem emunato lishenei afar Michamocha bal gevurot Umidomelach Melech memit u'mechaye U'matzmiach Yeshua V'ne'aman atah lahachayot kol chai Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye kol chai. Page 303. Nikadesh et shimcha be'olam Kashem shemachdishim oto b'shmei marom Kakatuv ayad neviecha V'karazel zel yamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Melocho ha'aretz kevodo אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כמחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We continue in the Amidah with the words in the prayer book or the words in our heart. And as we each come to the end of our own Amidah, we join together in a modern piece of liturgy, which Rachel shared with us last night at the Shabbat Shalom sampler, and seems particularly fitting this week. Where there is light in the soul, there is beauty the person. Where there is beauty in the person, there is harmony in the home. Where there is harmony in the home, there is honor in the nation. Where there is honor in the nation, there is peace in the world. Where there is light in the soul, there is beauty in the person. Where there is beauty in the person, there is harmony in the home. Where there is harmony in the home, there is honor in the nation. Where there is honor in the nation, please let there be peace in the world.
Amen. Thank you so much, Beth. It's time for us to transition now to our Torah service, which will begin with this beautiful set of blessings from Derek and Robin to Aiden. And I'll ask you now, Derek, Robin, and Aiden, to step up to your mic so we can hear you.
I'm gonna read this so that I get it out. I love you. A blessing is God's favor and protection. From the moment you were put in my arms, I wanted to protect you from pain. You are one of the most compassionate people I've ever known. You stand up for others. Like the time you were in first grade and a fourth grader was bullying someone on the kickball field, fearlessly you walked right up to the bully and your reprimand brought him to tears. You care about the pain of other people. You want to protect them the way that I wish I could protect you. For every injury and emotional obstacle you face, your dad and I have wished that we could fix them. However, instead of relying solely on us, you are resilient. You have the strength to do your best in school, take care of an injured former racehorse, do physical therapy, study for your mitzvah, and more, all while confronting your struggles. The truest blessing is for the chutzpah that you already have. So I offer you this. I bless you with the knowledge that you can and already do make a difference to those around you. You are more than good enough. You are everything that I could ever have hoped for in a daughter and more. I love you with all my heart, and I am so proud of you today and every single day.
According to the musical Kinky Boots, the most beautiful thing in the world is a shoe. Your great-great-grandfather, Andrew Geller, whom you are named after, would agree. Born in Budapest, Andrew emigrated to New York in 1883, the oldest of 9 siblings. Briefly part of a comedy show, Andrew made and sold shoes for stage costumes. Andrew Geller Exquisite Footwear built a factory in Brooklyn, employing 7 Geller brothers. They were known for customer fairness. By 1941, NBC and CBS were advertising their store on Fifth Avenue. Andrew loved to watch racehorses at Belmont Park, but he did not bet. Though he believed in assimilation, he became more religious later in life. Supposedly, he recited afternoon prayers at the track. Your middle name comes from Rose Eunuch, your great-great-grandmother. Nana Rose would visit your grandmother Karen, bearing lox, kipper, herring, farmer's cheese for kreplach, and poppy seeds for cookies. Rose loved cooking and playing cards. Although Rose sometimes complained about non-Jewish people, She became more open-minded after surviving 2 heart surgeries. From shoes to horses, Brooklyn to Brookline, Creplock to cookies, Andrew and Rose live on in your humor, loyalty, and fairness. Your passion for animals and embrace of differences, though they echo our family history, appear in your own unique pursuits and perspectives. May you continue to honor your namesakes as you blossom into your own.
Got it? So we present you, Aiden, with your first talit. It's a talit that Aiden picked out, and it has the names of all 4 mothers on it.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef b'tzitzit.
Amen.
Amen. Now we'll ask you, Robin and Derek, to take the Torah, to uncover it, and invite the rest of us to rise in our body, our spirit, and turn to page 393. Take the Torah and give it to Aiden.
So hug it to you first.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai Iti Uneromim Shemo Yachdav.
Yasher koach, we will sing as you put the Torah down and uncover just the top and put it back on top. Ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 na. We may be seated. Ya na 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 ya na 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 na. Yasher koach. There's something really powerful about the wonderful group that you are doing best to maintain appropriate social distancing within one beautiful sunlit room, that but for Aiden today, you would only have 9, but you make the minyan only as of today. So welcome. That's so apt. Transport ourselves from a background wall in DC or Bethesda or where have you to the steppes of Midian some 3,250 years ago. And imagine, this is an artist's rendering, of course, a shepherd in exile, wandering and seeing a bush aflame that was not consumed. Welcome to the book of Exodus. We start this incredible journey today. And it opens with a recap of Genesis. Our ancestors came down, and by verse 8 of chapter 1 in this week's Torah portion, there arose a new king, Melech Chadash shelo yada et Yosef, who didn't know Joseph. According to Nahum Sarna in the JPS Chumash, knowledge, yada, in the Bible is not primarily intellect or mental. It is rather experiential, embedded in the emotions and encompassing such qualities as contact, intimacy, concern, relatedness, and mutuality. Themes that we need in this country, in this city, right now. And we see what happens when we don't know in this relational way. Not to know is synonymous with dissociation, indifference, alienation, and estrangement, which culminates in callous disregard for another's humanity. So as soon as Pharaoh sets out these evil decrees, we learn of two remarkable women, presumably Egyptian women, saving Hebrew lives. The first recorded act of civil disobedience in this week's Parsha. Shifra and Puah, models of how women bonding together can be freedom fighters against oppression, but also moving beyond nationalistic concerns to bear witness to the power of faith to transcend ethnic boundaries. I think of the beautiful blessing just given to Aiden and her ancestress Rose, and that shift, the same shift, is discernible in our sacred text. And of course, in every generation, we have the opportunity to speak out against injustice just as Shifra and Puah did. And as they demonstrated, few numbers can still make a difference. Each individual counts toward justice and liberation. I will say civil disobedience has a bit of a different ring today based on this week. We need to discern, are we standing for those universal values, or is it in the service of the narrow? The burning bush, which is our reading today, Exodus chapter 3, focuses on that big picture. Vayar, he looked, vehine, and wow, hasneh boer ba'esh, this bush is burning with fire, v'hasneh eineno uchal, and yet the bush is not consumed. He says, Moses does while wandering in Midian, asurana, I've got to stop and turn, go out of my way, ve'ereh, and look, examine, understand, appreciate, et hamareh hagadol hazot, this incredible appearance, this amazing sight. We're going to hear those words in our first reading coming up. And I want that to be a blessing for us to ask ourselves, what are we amazed by? Even here, even now, in the midst of challenge, in the midst of pandemic, in the midst of national quagmire, what's amazing, even here, even now? And finally, this name that we're going to hear in Derek's third reading right before Aiden's, who will then later amplify some of these themes in interpreting Parshat Shmot, Eheyeh. Tell him who sent you. Moses asks in verse 13, when they ask, who is this God? What's the name of this entity that is saying, let my people go, and having the chutzpah to fight the greatest powers in the land? Ma'omar elehem, what am I going to say to them? Vayomer Elohim el Moshe, and Moses responds to God, Eheyeh asher eheyeh. I am what I am. I will be what I will be. No clear tense, no clear gender, no clear anything, just becoming. This is God's self-revelation of the truest name, the most accurate reflection of the ineffable. Vayomer kotomar livnei Yisrael. And God said, this is what you're going to say to these doubtful, enslaved children of Israel. Eheyeh shlachani aleichem. Eheyeh sent me to you. Proving that we can use this as our name. Rabbi David Cooper has a beautiful interpretation rooted in Rabbi Arthur Green, a teacher of many of us. Yeah, it's not I am that I am so much, the tense is unclear, but I become what I become. Moshe wants a God, as we so often do, with a fixed name and identity and clear pronouns. But in a most idol-shattering epiphany, God won't be pinned down. And look here at how similar Eheyeh is to the name that we so often add a D and an N to, when in fact it's the sound of breath, the sound of wind, Yud-He Vav-He and Aleph-He Yud-He. The name Yud-He Vav-He emerges in that moment, like a cubist painting. David Cooper continues, this portrait in a word shows the God process from many angles. God is the verb, Yud-He Vav-He, to be, conjugated in several tenses simultaneously, past, present, future, and still unfinished. You see it at the bottom, Haya, Hoveh, Yihiyeh, was, is, will be, Yud-He Vav-He. And Eheyeh is simply the name of I am in process of was, is, will be. As Rabbi Arthur Green suggests, God is in process. God is not a noun. God is not a noun. Enjoy. And if I am to live with this God, concludes David Cooper, I have to take my own unfolding seriously. I must ask, if I, created in God's image, am not fixed, what am I becoming? How can I best align myself with the evolving divine process? Likewise, our Judaism may not be fixed. We are all agents of its unfolding, and we are celebrating the newest agent arriving into the unfolding this morning. And as human beings, perhaps we too are more verb than noun. A blessing for openness, for possibility this Shabbat. We turn in our Chumashim. If you have, it's hard to see here, what's on the top. I think it was 398 in the old Plout, 350 in the new. We're picking up at Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. And in celebration of the first Aliyah, we're going to invite Vicky and Joel Bremen, who before they became DC voters and then Maryland were Georgia, and organizers and amazing people standing for public health and environmental consciousness and values that matter in a state that has just done something truly historic this week. Leader from the Jews of color world and a friend and teacher of many of us, April Baskin, wrote in the last 24 hours, it's true this week saw white supremacy, racism, anti-Semitism on display in ways we're not used to seeing. But we all know they're not new, just more visible. And as hard, as much as a dagger as those images have been to our hearts, the fact that they're more visible means they're easier to oppose. We are watching the beginning of white supremacy's death rattle, not its rallying cry. And this week also brought us Georgia's first Black senator and its first Jewish senator. Don't let fear drown out the power of that fact. Besides the lives tragically lost, everything broken can be replaced. We are now better positioned to continue the fight and to win. In celebration of history being made, Vicky and Joel for our first Aliyah, Exodus chapter 3, verse 1.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah.
Amen. Umoshe haya roeh et tzon yitro chotno kohen Midyan, vayinhag et hatzon achar hamidbar, ויבוא אל הר האלוהים חורבה, וירא מלאך אדוני אליו בלבת אש מתוך הסנה, וירא והנה הסנה בוער באש, והסנה איננו אוכל. ויאמר משה אסורה נא ואראה את המראה הגדול הזה, מדוע לא יבער הסנה? וירא אדוני כי שר לראות, ויקרא אליו אלוהים מתוך הסנה. ויאמר משה משה, ויאמר הנני. ויאמר אל תקרב הלום, של נעליך מעל רגליך, כי המקום אשר אתה עומד עליו אדמת קודש הוא. ויאמר אנוכי אלוהי אביך, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב. ויסתר משה פניו, כי ירא מהביט אל האלוהים.
ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל.
Amen. And thank you for representing the Peachtree State. You want to add anything?
No, just that we're delighted with the results. Delighted.
Right. Thank you for all that you did to bring those values to the fore during your time there, and your many friends and connections there who have done something amazing. And beyond the partisan, simply the possibility of who was elected from which ethnic, religious, racial groups. This is a watershed moment and an enduring sense of possibility. Thank you. Yasher koach. Turning to the beautiful tableau of the minyan in the Paley home, we are thrilled to invite our own Karen and Heath and Karen and Dennis as you have the second aliyah. If you grab, if you're actually, well, I guess Pam is leading this one, not from the Torah, so Pam is on deck. We are at Exodus chapter 3, verse 7, 399 in the Old Plout, or bottom of 351 in the New. Picking up in front of the burning bush, please. The blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asek b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai ra'o ra'iti et oni ami asher b'mitzrayim ve'et tzakatam shamati mipnei notzav ki yadati et machovav va'ered lehatzilo miyad Mitzrayim ulha'aloto min ha'aretz hahi el eretz tova urchava el eretz zavat chalav udvash el mekom haknaani ve'hachiti ve'ha'emori ve'ha'pirizi ve'hachivi ve'hayebusi ve'ata hine za'akat bnei Israel ba'a elai ve'gam ra'iti et halachatz asher Mitzrayim לוחצים אותם, ואתה לך, ואשלחך אל פרעה, והוצא את עמי בני ישראל ממצרים.
The blessing after.
Baruch atah ha-melamed Torah lomar Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen.
Mazal
Yasher
tov.
koach. Huge mazel tov to all the grandparents, please.
We'll continue now with the third aliyah, which will lift up the very section that Rabbi Fred just taught us so powerfully, the theophany in which God introduces God's self to Moshe in that enigmatic, spacious way. And we call forward Aiden's parents, Robin and Derek. Ya'amdu Italea bat David Revan v'Chaya Malka v'David Avram ben Chaim v'Keren la'aliyah hashlishit. Robin, if you want to have a kiss as well, you can.
Oh, thank you. Baruch hu Adonai Habarach. Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kirvanu La'avodato V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen.
Vayomer Moshe El Ha-Elohim Mi Anoki Ki Elek El Paro Ve'ki Otzi Et Bnei Yisrael Mi Mitzrayim Vayomer Ki Ehyeh Imak V'zeh Lecha Ha'od Ki Anoki Shalachtika V'hotziacha et ha'am miMitzrayim ta'avdun et ha'Elohim al ha'har hazeh. Vayomer Moshe el ha'Elohim Hinei anoki var el bnei Israel ve'amarti lahem Elohei avoteichem shalachani aleichem ve'amru li ma shemo ma omar aleihem. Vayomer Elohim el Moshe eheyeh asher eheyeh vayomer ko tomar livnei Yisrael eheyeh shalachani aleichem. Vayomer od Elohim el Moshe ko tomar el bnei Israel Adonai Elohei avoteichem Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov shalachani aleichem Zei shemi le'olam V'zeh zikri l'dor dor. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yashar koach for the honor and for the reading. And we hope that this will be the first of many times for you to be at the Torah as well. We'll pause now and turn to Beth Sperber Ritchie for a healing blessing.
So as Matt just put in the chat, if you have someone that you're holding that is in need of a blessing of healing, however you interpret that blessing of healing, whether that's a physical healing, an emotional healing, spiritual healing, to just, if you feel comfortable, put their name or names into the chat so we can all hold all of them in our hearts. I think what I'm holding in my heart this week is what we were singing about before. I'm hoping for healing in our nation, to bring the honor that Chinese proverb talks about. So I'm holding our whole country in my heart for this particular blessing. Mishabera Avotenu v'imotenu hu yivarech et hacholim hu yivarech et hacholot v'yanik lahem orech ruach ometz lev refuah shlema amen. Mishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu hu yivarech et hacholim hu yivarech et hacholot v'yanik lahem orech ruach ometz lev u'refuah shlema amen. May the one who blessed all those who came before give patience and courage to us now. Help us find the strength to nurture and to bring a full healing. Amen. Mishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu hu yivarech et hacholim hu yivarech et hacholot v'yanik lahem orech ruach ometz lev refuah shlema amen. A full and complete healing to all of us and to all of the country. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Beth. And hold on to these prayers for all the names and all the groups and all the nations that have been listed here in our chat. It's a pleasure and a joy now to turn it over to Pam Summers, who has been Aiden's teacher and among many in our community, to call her student to the Torah.
Tamod, Tamod, Habachra bat HaMitzvah, Eden Shoshana, bat David Amram ve'ita Leah, Maftira Hiski.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kirvanu la'avodato v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Vayashav Moshe el Adonai vayomar Adonai lama harayota la'am hazeh lama tzeh shelachtani umeaz Bati el paro ledaber bishmecha hera la'am hazeh v'chatzel lo chitzalta et amecha. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe ata tir'ech asher eseh lefaro ki ve'ahad chasaka yishachem uve'ahad chasaka yigarshem me'artzo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Amen. Mazal Tov, what a beautiful reading. And as we close this first parasha of Shemot, inviting us all now to rise in body or in spirit or in both and see that the Torah is now lifted.
I lift it first.
No, do this first. I do this.
No, you don't.
So
No.
I did this first.
Usually, Derek, just come over the edge of your table and press down. And Ethan, especially if you can help your dad to lift it up. Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe. You can be seated, Derek. Lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe. And as
Now the belt.
as the Torah is now dressed,
Okay.
we can sing it to its closing. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomcheha me'ushar. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomcheha me'ushar. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, shalom. It is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, 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 shalom. Yishar koach. I love the whole family dressing the Torah together. How beautiful. Now, Aiden, we turn to you for the Haftarah, your introduction and your chanting. Take your time gathering whatever you need. We're ready for you as soon as you're ready. And our Gabayim have placed the citation in the chat. We'll be hearing verses from Isaiah chapter 27 in the newer Plout on page 375 or in the older version on page 692, and Aiden will begin.
Isaiah the prophet preached for about 40 years during the second half of the 8th century BCE. During that time, the Israelites' enemies, the Assyrians, destroyed part of the Israelite territory. Isaiah blamed the loss of territory on the corruption of the Israelite upper class. The connection between today's Parsha and this Haftarah is the Israelites' enslavement in Egypt and God's plan for freedom. Similarly, the Haftarah tells the story of Israel's misfortunes and Isaiah's promise that it will all work out in the end. This Haftarah can be found on page 375 in the New Plout. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratza b'divreihem הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובנביאי האמת בצדק. אמן. הבאים ישרש יעקב ויציג תפרח ישראל ומלאו פני תבל תנובה הקמקות מכהו היכהו אם כהרג הרודה אורה בששה בשלחה תריבנה הגה ברוחו הקשה ביום קדים על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל. אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Yishar kochech, beautifully done. And now we turn to you, Aiden, to hear your Devar Torah, your words of wisdom and understanding based on your learning for this day.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Exodus chapter 1, verse 8 reads, "A new king rose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, 'Look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us deal shrewdly with them so they may not increase.'" Right there, this is where the problem starts. Pharaoh felt threatened, so he used his privilege and attacked the Israelites. He took away everything they had and made them slaves, made them nothing. People becoming oppressed because of others has happened a number of times throughout history and in everyday life. A person with privilege feels intimidated by another and attacks. Black rights, women's rights, trans rights, Muslim rights, LGBTQIA+ rights, on and on have all been attacked because of others who feel that they are somehow better because of their race, gender, sexuality, wealth, you name it. People have been attacked and oppressed by it because of it. Now, what do I mean by attack? It's not like privileged people see a minority and start physically assaulting them on sight. Well, yes, that happens, but also attacks that range from terrorist assaults to asking for a new doctor at the hospital because a woman cannot treat you the same way a man can. People make snap judgments when they are scared, and this is what Pharaoh did. This is what millions of people do every day, allow fear to obscure their perspective. The fear of another person because of the way they look, dress, or express themselves all stems from the human instinct of fight or flight. When humans were evolving and saw something they had never seen before, they either attacked or ran. There is another source for the growth of persecution. Most racism is learned through teachings. If you grow up in a household that flies a Confederate flag from the roof, you will most likely grow up with the same worldviews as your family because you were never taught anything else. This wasn't the case for Pharaoh. Neither the fear-based or learned explanations for racism explain Pharaoh's actions. The Israelites and Egyptians lived in peace before his reign of power, which we know because of the stories of Joseph. So what went through Pharaoh's head when he made the horrible decision to enslave the Jewish people? Well, let's talk about that. Step into his shoes for a moment. Pretend you are the leader of Egypt in the 13th century BCE. Your job is to protect the Egyptian people and your religion. There is another group of people that live in your land who believe in something else, only one God. For years, you have lived in peace with these people, but they are starting to multiply. Suddenly, you rule over more Israelites than Egyptians. What do? Kill all of the male babies and enslave them to do your labor, duh. Isn't that a turn of events? Everything was great until that last sentence. Where did this overwhelming hate come from? How did Pharaoh go from a ruler over thousands of people who lived in harmony to a ruler with thousands of subjects and thousands of slaves? Somehow, because of his fear of being overpowered, he believed a Jewish person was less of a person than him and his people, just like how every racist thinks in our modern day. Pharaoh may have felt threatened by the Jewish people, but then thought, oh wait, they aren't like me, they are different, so they must be subhuman and therefore should be slaves. I personally have had the privilege of not being affected by racism directly. I have lived a safe life where I am not attacked for my skin color. With this privilege, I'm able to advocate for people who are oppressed and educate myself and others. I was trying to think of examples of cultural assumptions that a young person could easily address and correct, and here are some. In my experience, as a child in school, teachers would often say things like, I need a strong boy to help me move this chair, or which of you boys can carry these books downstairs, which clearly is indirectly sexist and misogynistic because we've all been taught that boys are strong, period. Another example of society normalizing hate in movies and books, a lot of times the bad guy is suspiciously similar to the stereotype of a Jew. Big nose, curly dark hair, etc. In the Disney movie Tangled, the evil woman who kidnaps Rapunzel fits this description, and many people online recently have been criticizing Disney for it. Another movie that does this is Harry Potter, when the greedy goblins of Gringotts Bank appear. There's even a Star of David engraved on the bank's floor. You can write the makers of the movies to complain, but a more realistic approach to actually change something is using your voice, in social media or in real life. It is important to know these things so you can look out for misdoings in the future. This problem has gotten so normalized that it is far beyond my control as a 13-year-old girl, but any action is helpful. If you see a person being harassed or attacked, take a stand. Don't be the bystander that lets this abuse happen. Supporting and donating to charities and businesses owned by people of color makes a difference. Peacefully protesting for people in need makes a difference. Spreading awareness to those who are not affected makes a difference. Anything you can do is helpful. Imagine in the Torah if the Egyptian people stood against the wrongdoings of their leader and helped the Israelites. Our ancestors' past would have been much different. We have seen what happens when hatred and fear goes untamed. For example, what happened on January 6th, right here in our own capital. History is repeating itself time and time again, and it's time we did something about it. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and wow. I'm going to allow us all just to exhale for a second from those incredibly powerful words. And Aiden, we'll save the chat for you so you can see the comments that are rolling in right now in response to your preaching. I look at you and think, get ready, CNN, here she comes. Or maybe it's another context, but your voice is going to be needed in our world as you continue to grow. Rabbi Fred and I have words of blessing we want to pass on to you, not just from ourselves, but for our whole community. And Aiden, if I could ask you to just come closer to your camera so I can see you, and if I could reach out and hold your hand, I would. Of the many, many powerful things that have been given to us in this week's Torah and this week's history, there are two that I want to especially lift up for you this morning. The first is being aware of those moments when you're going to be called out of anonymity, out of hiding. And I'm thinking very much of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, who thinks he's escaped the complexities of his life by running away to Midian. And it's in this moment that we read this morning when he's called forth by this miraculous sight of a burning bush and told that actually he's not going to live a quiet pastoral life. He's got important work to do. And as we know, he argues with God and says, I'm not the one. I have a stutter and I'm not really qualified for this job. But that option is not open to him. And I believe, Aiden, that those moments are going to come for you as well. And one of the blessings I hope for you is that you have the strength, even against your own doubts, to rise up to serve in the ways that you're going to be called in your life. The second of the two things that I wish for you to come to know God. That's kind of simple, right? That's big. And as Rabbi Fred taught us earlier this morning, and the Torah teaches us, the word God itself is an English placeholder for something much bigger. In our movement, in our Reconstructionist movement, we've sometimes lifted up the words that Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan gave us, which is to say, God is the power that makes for salvation. It's that enormous energy that we all ultimately have the capacity to tap into and to participate in creating a godly world. And my wish for you, Aiden, is that you hear those moments, have those theophanies, those moments when God's presence feels so real to you that you feel ready to stand up and move forward, even against any adversity that you may face in your own life. I'll turn it to Rabbi
Amen.
now.
Before the words of tradition, to add to blessing, to combine Rabbi Rachel's insights, Moses says, I'm not up for it. But God sees something in Moses against his doubts that says, you have this amazing leadership potential. You have the values. You have the ability. You have the clarity. You have the connection. You can do this. And we all, again, are in that mode sometimes. And I want to invite you to see yourself the way we see you, the way that this outpouring in the chat box, the way the feeling in our eyes and our hearts are beaming at you, for the confidence and the ability and the eloquence and the power and the insight and the connection that you bring. Wherever you stand, just like at the burning bush, it is holy ground, partly because you are walking on it. Own that. In the words of our tradition, the three blessings, we're all welcome to say, Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be, and I will try to use the name of God that God says in your Torah portion is the name. Yevarchech eheyeh v'yishmerech, Ken Yehi Ratzon. Ya'er eheyeh panav elaich v'chunek, Ken Yehi Ratzon. Yisa eheyeh panav elaich ve'asem lach shalom, Ken Yehi Ratzon. And we say together the blessing for reaching such a milestone and burst into song for you. Baruch atah eheyeh Eloheinu ruach ha'olam, shehechiyanu ve'kiyamanu ve'higianu lazman hazeh. Simen tov u'mazel tov, mazel tov u'simen tov, simen tov u'mazel tov, mazel tov u'simen tov, simen tov u'mazel tov, mazel tov u'simen tov. Yehelanu, 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 u'lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ולכל יושבי תבל, יהי לנו, ולכל ישראל, יהי לנו, ולכל יושבי תבל. Yasher koach. Drink in this moment. We sure are. Thanks. All right. You can have a very momentary seat. With such insight and brilliance in front of us, we turn to reflections on the tumultuous last 3 or 4 days, forget week, as we think about what an inflection moment this is for our country in so many ways, with hope and peril in almost even balance, and some of us shifting by the minute in which one we may be focused on. It's a tradition to offer a prayer for the country that we're in. This is where Fiddler on the Roof, a prayer for the Tsar. Keep him, bless him and keep him far from us. This is where this comes from. We traditionally say something, and just in the last 48 hours, a colleague, Danielle Uppin, circulated a prayer for our nation using the imagery of this week's Torah portion and the imagery as well from the ransacked capital to help us understand what it can mean to sanctify a moment even like this. I invite us to offer this aloud together as if it were our own prayer. 4 screens worth of this. And if we choose to rise in our place as we read it, we are welcome to do so. We, the people, one nation under God, turn to you, our protector, our rock and redeemer. Guide us through the exile of what this nation has become, grasping for glimmers of light in a time of darkness, plague, death, and distortion. Salvage truth, who has become a stifled mute, drowning offshore in the shadows of Lady Liberty's torch. God of our ancestors, you once answered the agonized cry of an enslaved people, writhing under the hardship of torturous taskmasters. You remembered them, performed miracles for them, raised them up to be your people. God, who pierced through history with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, remember us. Bless us with your grace and saving power. Amidst the tumult of a teetering democracy, we cry out now. From the horror that is a land of fear, dividing our country, we ask, Ad matai, how much suffering is enough? This, too, is a prayer. We who had been standing on the precipice of a new beginning, a vaccine of hope, ask that you see us through to a life of peace, healing, and reconciliation for all. Hamakom, God of this place and of all places, our America is also holy ground. We have turned to see, but the fire is raging and consuming. Deliver us on eagle's wings, the symbol of this great nation. Hineni, we are ready. Will you call? God above, protect our democracy and our ideals of liberty and justice. Shelter our institutions and our nation's leaders. Free us, save us, redeem us, deliver us, and bring us to safety. And we say together, Amen.
Amen. Those were the words I needed to say. Thank you. We'll turn now to the blessing for the new month, which comes to us this coming Thursday, the new Hebrew month of Shvat. the words in our Siddur, page 425 and following, and take this blessing for the new month of Shvat as a cue to see the ongoing cycles of nature, which are, at least so far, separate from the cycles of human history, untouched by the cycles of human history, so that even in the midst of our anxiety about, as the blessing just said, this teetering democracy, we also turn to notice in the middle of winter, the trees beginning to prepare themselves for spring. The beginning of sap rising invisibly to us, but powerfully inside of their trunks. And the very, very beginning of the fattening of buds. Page 425, it's a custom to rise here for all who are comfortable and able. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu shetechadesh aleinu et hachodesh hazeh, renewing us this month for goodness, for blessing. Vatiten lanu chaim arukim, for long life, chaim shel shalom, a life of full peace and equanimity. Chaim shel tova, chaim shel bracha, chaim shel mazon ufarnasa, a life of sustenance and resources. Chaim shel chilutz atzamot, chaim sheyesh bahem ahava, ve'irat shamayim, love and awe, chaim she'en bahem busha uchlima, chaim shel osher vechavod, chaim sheyesh bahem yosher utvuna, vehaskel v'dea, chaim she'imalu mishalot libenu letova, the deepest longings and questions of our hearts answered for good. Amen. Selah 427. Misha asa nisim lavotenu leimotenu vegalota me'avdut lecherut. Hu yigal otanu bekarov. Vikabetz nidachenu me'arba kanfot haaretz. Chaverim kol Yisrael. Chaverim kol Yisrael, Chaverim kol Yisrael, Chaverim kol Yisrael, v'nomar Amen. The beginning of the Hebrew month of Shvat will fall this coming Thursday. May it come to us and to all Israel for goodness. Rosh Chodesh Shvat yeh bayom hachamishi haba aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael letova. Elai, 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 elai. Yechadesheu HaKadosh Baruch Hu aleinu ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, lechaim u'leshalom, lesason u'lesimcha,
Amen.
le'yeshua u'lenechama, v'nomar amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We can remain standing and turn to page 441 in the Siddur. The proverbial ark doors have now closed, and we say, this Torah is a precious teaching. Al ta'azovu, may we not abandon it. Eitz chaim hi lama chazikim ba, ve'tomcheha me'u יושר דרכיה, דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. We can be seated now and turn to the realm of memory and honoring the memories that we now hold. We want to extend our condolences to the families of those who died in the insurrection this past week. And we, of course, extend that comfort no matter what side of the political spectrum people have been on. And we also, many of us are holding in our heart the extended family of Tommy Raskin, of Congressman Jamie Raskin's son, his wife Sarah. We want to acknowledge the passing of Muriel Durley, an Atlanta civil rights leader who was lost to us just hours ago. And of course, to acknowledge the many hundreds of thousands in our country who are still falling prey to this ferocious virus. I ask for people to feel welcome to share the names of loved ones in our chat, and also want to acknowledge those losses in our community. People may have seen on our communication this week, our member Susan Gaeta is now mourning her brother George Feltman. There's a Shiva this evening at 7:30. And also Jody Shapiro remembering her mother Jerry Markoff, Lori Persh remembering her mother Beatrice Cuff, and Jody Lipson, her stepmother Arlene Lipson, all in the first 30 days of their mourning. And let us also acknowledge those yortzites being observed this week. Judy Gelman, her son, and Norm Gelman's grandson, Samuel P. Gelman Salop. Wendy Baber's grandmother, Joanne Goldberg. Sarah Sennett's father, David Greenblatt. Marty Tulchin's mother-in-law, Dorothy Goldsmith. Linda Caxer's mother, Jeanette Johnson. Adina Cole's mother, Charlotte Cole. Stu Simon's wife, Marcia Simon. Len Sirota's mother, Hilda Sirota. Donald Kane's mother, Cynthia Smith. Jorge Srabstein's father, Manuel Srabstein. Joan Bacharach's father, Leopold Bacharach. Julie Farkas's father, Ray Farkas. Meredith Fuchs' mother, Cyril Fuchs. Marcia Cohen's grandmother, Anna Green. Michelle Mellinger's great aunt, Ray Kaufman, and also Aunt Evelyn Spivak. Sherry Siegerman's father, Julius Siegerman. Judy Gelman's uncle, brother of our beloved late Esther Gelman, Herbert Paper. Myrna Parker's sister, Roz Balberer. Abraham Finkelstein's father, Harry Finkelstein. Judy Glickman Schneider's father, Albert Glickman. Louise Milkman's father, Roger Milkman. Roberta Drucker's grandfather, Mordechai Pollack. Lauren Amdursky's father, Harold Amdursky. Tim Littman's mother-in-law, Sadie Leibowitz. Charlie Richmond's father, Cy Richmond. And Irving Weinberg's father, Harry Weinberg. Invite all of those who are in mourning or observing a yortzeit to please rise as you're able. Page 451 in our Siddur. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם לעמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו amen. I ask us now to turn back to page 445, to turn it over to Robin Paley to lead us rising all together. Page 445.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latei gedula lioter breishi, shanan tan lanu torah emet, v'chaye olam neta betochenu. V'anachnu korim, umishtachavim, umodim, livnei melech, Malchem Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noter Shamayim V'Yotei Haaretz, U'Meshav Yakaro B'Shamayim Yima'al, U'Shtina Tuzo, V'Gov Hei Meromim, Hu Eloheinu Ein Od, Em Malkeinu Efes Ulato, Kakatu b'torato, v'yadatayum, v'hashavota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim imal, v'al haaretz, mitachat, ein od. Kakatu v'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'nemar, v'haye Adonai, le'melech al kol haaretz, v'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Shar Koach, thank you so much. We've come now to the very end of our morning together, and we're going to transition shortly into some breakthrough discussion, schmoozing and talking together, a chance to check in at the end of this week about this week, and also just to check in with each other and say hello. Want to turn first to Steve Horowitz, our board member, for greetings. Steve, if you're here.
Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, everybody. I'm Steve Horowitz on the board, and on behalf of the board, I'm going to welcome everybody and let you all know that the board, the clergy, everyone's here for you during this difficult time. If anybody wants to chat or just talk about something that's troubling or not troubling you, we're here for everybody. It's our community. We take care of each other. A huge mazel tov to Aiden, Derek, and Robin, and the entire family and all the guests. Aiden, you were phenomenal. You are phenomenal. You are going to do great things. I wish you all the best. So a final good Shabbos, and I'll see some of you in the breakout room.
Thank you. Yasher Koach. And thank you again to everyone who helped to make this service possible, starting with that front row in the Paley home, but also our Gabayim, Matt and Beth, and Beth and others for contributing to the davening, the Torah reading, and everything. We are so blessed to be in community on a moment like this. So we're going to go to micro community, like a table at the Oneg. You sit randomly for 12 or 15 minutes for sharing and make sure that everyone gets to check in over the course of our time together. And then we're going to come back shortly after noon for just maybe 20 minutes of full group for anyone who would like to. A chance to sit a little bit in silence, a little bit in song, and with a few short reflections, maybe things that bubble up or insights you hear from someone else at your Oneg table that you would like to bring to the whole. It's just so that we can be together at the end of a remarkable week that has a remarkable and sacred exclamation point at the end of it. Thanks to Aidan and thanks to you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome back as we're gathering here from a little opportunity to check in and to process. We wanted to invite maybe just a few people to share. And if I could be so bold as to suggest that maybe people who haven't shared before in this larger group on Shabbat, people who are not accustomed to speaking up, could we hear from you? Just seeing some faces of people that I wish I would invite to share. One thought from this week, either that you shared with your group or just that you had yourself. Anybody? You can use the hand raising function. It's easier to see who's reaching out to speak up.
Hello, I'm Marty Short.
Marty, please go ahead.
And I was very interested to hear what people were saying in our group and all the feelings that and confusion that they were feeling. And finally, it got to the point where somebody says, what are we going to do? What can we do with all these people that are seeing things in a vastly different way that we're seeing things? And I think there was a discussion of how these folks have been neglected and have been forgotten and have become invisible. And then a psychiatrist or a psychologist in our group talked about groupthink. But I think we need to reach out to these people, and we need to, and not personally, but our government somehow. They're people that have misguided for whatever reason. We need to figure out why and what happened and what's wrong, and we need to talk to them and have them. And I know that's nuts. I know you all think that's a crazy idea, but how else are we going to understand?
Just want to appreciate the generosity of spirit from someone who works for the architect of the Capitol. It was your sacred grounds that were defaced, and from that place, professionally and personally, to be able to say that, we really appreciate your insight. Thank you, Marty.
Amen. Another? Anyone? I don't want to. I have a few people that I'm looking at.
Rachel?
Yeah.
This is Neil.
Go ahead, Neil.
I'm not as generous to give these people that benefit of the doubt. I don't think this is going to end. This is really a continuation of the struggle since the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see more and more of this. Mm-hmm. And my fear is that the end could be another civil war.
Mm.
I am really concerned what we saw, and particularly after the vote, when they talked about it, after the Capitol had been ransacked, you saw leadership, congressmen, senators, still coming up with the same old things.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I say, I think this is a continuity, and I think, democracy and freedom.
Uh-oh.
He's frozen.
Yeah, we just lost you, Neil. You were just about to say something big, I think.
It was Antifa. They shut him up.
Well, Neil, when we get you back, if you want to finish your sentence, we would love to hear democracy and freedom. That's a good prompt. Fill in the blank. Maybe one or two more, and love to see the gender balance.
Owner is raising her hand.
Sue Dorfman, and I'm sorry, Matt, what did you say? Who else?
Jane Handler after that.
Okay, so Sue, if we could hear from you, and Sue, if you would maybe share where you've been the last several months, because that gives you a different perspective than many of us. Wait, Sue, you're muted still. Great.
Hi. I think some people know I've probably traveled about 20,000 miles in the last 6 months, and more than that this past year, photographing elections and democracy, and was down in Georgia a couple of times last month, and then came back up to DC on Thursday. A couple of really quick things. Every single phone call, every text message, every curing the ballot made a difference. People in Georgia may have gotten 5 or 6 phone calls or text messages per day, but I think there was a sense of an exhaustion, and it just helped lift the spirit. I think that there's a lot of lessons that are going to come out of Georgia on terms of organizing that are going to be brought back to other states, and that's going to be critically important for all the states where the Congress people voted for, the Congress people stood up in opposition to the election. I'm going to say that there's going to be quite a significant number of challenges to those elected representatives. So the ground game that took place in Georgia, again, this is just my sense, but the ground game that took place in Georgia and that took place across the nation is going to be put to very good use in regards to a lot of the people that came out or that spoke out in favor of Trump. I think that it is critically important to recognize that the people who supported Trump did so for a wide number of different reasons. And just like everybody who supports the Democratic Party doesn't believe the same thing, the same is true for people who support Trump. I've probably photographed a couple of different Trump rallies. I was there. I couldn't get into the Trump rally, this last one, but I spoke to and photographed a number of people who are boarding the buses. I mean, it's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and we can't write off people. And I've had more conversations with people that are at Trump rallies who basically are there in part because they feel that they've got a kinship among other people. They may not necessarily like him or his policies, but they feel that they're welcome there and they're not welcome in a Democratic space. And I think that that needs to be looked at, as well as looking at, the crazy, and I really do think they're crazies that believe in QAnon and some of the other things. So that's just really quickly things. I've got a lot of faith that our democracy will continue. I've got a tremendous amount of faith in the young people in this country to really pick up the mantle and really bring about change. So those are just a couple of my quick observations.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you. I want to say personally, especially for ending with a little ray of hope, because the reality is hard to take for a lot of us. The reality of what you're saying, even though we know it is reality. So Jane Handler, you were going to say something?
Yeah. I read something in the Post yesterday There was a long article by somebody who writes for them a lot, named Kennicott. I don't remember his first name.
Philip.
And he said that in the minds of the people who would actually do the thing that happened on Wednesday, they're expressing white supremacy, and that their view is that white people own America, and that the rest of us are just invited to come. And they own America, so they own the Capitol, so they can do anything they want to it. And the rest of us, and I know it includes Jews, from seeing the signs that some people had at that rally, it was shocking to me. So minorities, Jewish minorities and Black minorities and any minorities, we're just invited to come because they own the place and they get to make the decision of who comes and who doesn't come. And I don't know how many people think like that. We don't think like that. But if that's the kind of thought we're dealing with, in order to do something about it, you would have to begin to think, well, how would you deal with that kind of mindset? It's scary.
It is scary. And I want to just acknowledge that, just where Jane just landed. I think we all have our different ways of coping with fear and anxiety. Some of us do it by, maniacally almost reading the news and watching every single headline that comes in. Some of us by snacking, some of us by, I don't know what, many other things that we do. But maybe it helps just to acknowledge how scary this week has been, to watch what has been, as we said last night in our Shabbat gathering, a temple of our democracy. It's akin to our people watching the temple be destroyed, although thank God in this case it wasn't destroyed. It just had a broken window and some damage internally, and in fact, our leaders,
5 dead people.
And damage to people.
And of course, I don't mean to dismiss that, of course not. But the fact that the work carried on and was completed successfully, and by hook or by crook, by whatever kind of persuasion was needed, our sitting president did make the statement almost that was needed. So I guess I'm going to stop myself before I get even more political.
Okay. Oh, great. So picking up there, I put in the chat a line from Psalm 36 that I'm going to suggest that we chant as we reflect on light, on what does it mean to have the inner light, and how we can simultaneously acknowledge that there's a light of potential in all of us, but that misinformation and negativity has helped perhaps make that light harder to discern among some. We also just need to, because it has not been said, the words white supremacy have not been said, and the word privilege has not been said, except by Aiden, that wonderful representative of this emerging generation that gives Sue and the rest of us hope, who acknowledges that there is such a thing as privilege, and it was on display in it just on an unprecedented level when you compare to how primarily people of color-led protests that are peaceful have been disrupted compared to the treatment of this mob. And we need to acknowledge those differentials that are still there, from who falls to COVID to who falls to police violence. And at the same time, hold the light and to do our best, as many of you have noted, to discern the light and lift up the light in all of us. Ki imcha mekor chaim, ki imcha mekor chaim, ki imcha mekor chaim, beorcha nir'e or. For with you is the source of life. For with you is the source of life. For with you is the source of life. In your light we see light. Ki imcha. Ki imcha mekor chaim. Ki imcha mekor chaim. Ki imcha mekor chaim. Be'orcha nir'eh or. Let's lift up the light and let's do our best to be the light. Shabbat Shalom.
Amen. I'd like to say Motzi together to reconnect us with this most basic, most personal form of reassurance in the power of salvation. Join me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Stay well. Look forward to seeing you all at all kinds of various things happening this week.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for
Shabbat
this
Shalom.
space.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi Fred, thank you,
Thank
Rabbi
you.
Rachel.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank
Be
you,
safe.
everybody.